Triumph have been producing a bike called a Tiger since 1937 or so, and while it has morphed a lot over that time, it has always had an adventurous travel quality. Ted Simon wrote Jupiter's Travels about his ride around the world on his Tiger, so one could understand if Triumph didn't want to take any risks with such an iconic name. Instead, they have done something that could be seen as bold, by adding more electronic features and integrating them at a deeper level than any Triumph model before, and indeed, on the cutting edge for any brand. These electronics aren't peripheral gimmicks, they are at the heart of the bike, so if Triumph got it wrong, they risked tainting a name that carries a lot of heritage. The hard parts of the bike, including frame, engine and ergonomics, are all updated from the previous version, but the big changes start with the suspension. Triumph is now using WP suspension, and while WP is owned by KTM and the components look similar to those on a 1290 Adventure from the outside, Triumph is responsible for its own chassis development and has taken a very different approach compared to KTM for tuning. Additionally, they have worked with Continental to develop an AMU inertial measuring unit that manages cornering ABS, traction control, and the electronic suspension actively on the versions that come so equipped. Within this same control scheme, they have added a layer of engine management via throttle-by-wire that allows them to give very different engine characteristics in different modes. There are not many options to select on the Tiger Explorer. Instead, Triumph offers tiered trim variations. Packages that can be interpreted as basic, mid-level, and fully equipped. The bikes with cast wheels are called XRS, Base XR, Mid XRX, and Top Shelf Extra, and the more off-road friendly spoked wheel version XC, XCX Mid and XC Top. Europe and other markets get a Base XC that won't be imported to the US. All but the Base XR have the full complement of electronics, which is probably the biggest news. The XR and XC lines share suspension, wheel sizes 19 inches front, 17 inches rear, engine output, and so on. So for a buyer, the decision will probably come down to which version the dealer has in stock and which wheel type is more appealing for the buyer's intended riding terrain. Triumph are also offering one of each version as a low bike, which have custom suspension components and a lower seat that when combined drop height by about 2 inches. On models equipped with electronic suspension, the bike has 9 on-road and 9 off-road suspension presets, ranging from comfort on the soft end to sport on the firm end. Each preset was specifically calibrated, not simply a fixed percentage change to the next relative setting. The adjustment is made by a solenoid acting on the shim pack, so these are not simple clicker bleed adjustments, but rather, completely different damping curves for each setting. In use, the 9 steps feel like a steady progression, while moving one by one the difference can be hard to perceive, but even a 3-step difference is quite noticeable, and from one extreme to the other the bike is totally transformed. The rear suspension unit has a linkage rod that keeps track of the swing arm position relative to the bike, and automatically adjusts pre-load to ensure optimal geometry no matter the load. In addition to the suspension settings, there are electronic settings for engine output, throttle response, traction control, and ABS. In theory, there are hundreds of possible combinations between all these settings, and it is easy to imagine getting lost. But in practice, this is unlikely. Triumph have recognized that there are really only a few combos that make sense, and they have grouped them into modes: Sport, Road, Rain, Off-Road, and Rider. So, for example, Sport mode has sharp throttle response, ABS and TC with less intervention, and stiffer suspension. Road mode moderates each of these settings somewhat, and Rain mode softens them again and cuts the engine output back to 100 horsepower to reduce the chance of wheel spin. Off-road mode allows the rear brake to be locked while allowing more aggressive ABS on loose surfaces, and limits output. Rider mode is a wild card that allows the owner to customize each and every aspect as desired. Within each ride mode, the rider has an option to tune suspension settings on the fly. At a stop, One can toggle into the menus and change all preferences within the mode. These preferences are durable, so it will remember after you switch the bike off and back on what you like in each mode. If your eyes are glazing over, mine were too. But once you are out on the road, it all makes sense, and doesn't distract from the riding experience. I think Triumph have taken the right approach in allowing the rider access to all the finer details, but curating them into usable groups that truly improve the function of the bike without being distracting or gimmicky. Throwing a leg over the bike, the first thing I was struck by is its large size. Like other machines in this class, the bike is big, tall, and substantial. Clutch pull is light, the engine starts easily and smoothly, and the ergonomics are immediately agreeable. Kudos to Triumph for making proper off-road peg standard on the XC models. Engine response is what you would expect from a big triple smooth response, with torque that builds with revs. It happily moves the bike at any rate of speed, but it is probably the least exciting of the big adventure bikes. It lacks the grunt of a BMW 1200 GS, and the zip of a KTM 1290 or Ducati Multistrada.